Funding for this program is provided by the Powate Foundation,
with support from the Bell Association.
In 2008, the United States economy faced its worst downturn of the 21st century. The Obama administration was tasked with solving this via fiscal policy. They elected to use government spending, but that doesn't tell the whole story because government spending is amplified by the Keynesian multiplier. How does this effect work, and how well does it work? We asked these questions and more to our economic analyst Patrick Huang on this 21st century edition of Economics USA. I'm Adarsh Iyer. In 2008, the economy was contracting. To solve this problem, the Obama administration chose to spend more money, with the idea that the actual increase in GDP would be higher than the amount they had to spend, that it would stimulate the economy and multiply the effect of their spending. They predicted a quite high multiplier effect, but unfortunately, the actual impact of their spending was much less. To understand why this happened, we turn to our economic analyst, Patrick Puang.
When the government adds a certain amount of money into the economy, often the change in GDP is not exactly equal to this amount. This is because that money does not simply sit there. It is spent and respent by multiple households. Consider this graph. The initial amount of money goes to many households. These households will save some and spend the rest. Economists model the amount that is spent by MPC, the marginal propensity to consume. This amount that is spent goes to yet other households, and they repeat the same behavior. They will spend MPC of that money. This process continues to infinity, which with each successive iteration having an MPC times amount of money. Mathematicians call this a geometric series, a sequence of numbers where the successive number is gained by multiplying a constant ratio to the previous number. Using some clever algebraic manipulation, we can deduce that the sum of all of these numbers is equal to a over 1 minus r, where a is the initial value and r is the ratio. Notice how r, which is equal to MPC, can change the final value of GDP. When r is small, that is when households save most of their money, the total sum is also small. This means that if households save, the total change in GDP is not as large. On the other hand, when R is large and households spend most of their money, the resulting change can be much larger than the initial value.
The other tool of fiscal policy is tax cuts, not just government spending. These were used by President Bush in the early 2000s, when the economy was already booming. His tax cuts disproportionately affected the rich, who already have a great propensity to save their wealth. In addition, due to the long duration of these tax cuts, people felt bad in 2012 when the tax cuts were repealed. Our economic analyst Patrick Huang explains in more detail why these tax cuts were not as effective as they were supposed to be.
In the Keynesian multiplier equation, we can add another term, t, to account for the taxes. Notice how we multiply by 1 minus t. This is because every successive round of spending loses some money back to the government. The Bush tax cuts intended to reduce t. This creates more money to continue spending. Unfortunately, the value of MPC was very low. So low that even with the reduction in t, the final increase in the multiplier was not significant. This is why the Bush tax cuts did not have much of an effect.
French economist Frédéric Bastiat. Patrick, that's enough. Just get out. Get out. The French economist Frédéric Bastiat argued against Keynes' idea of the multiplier 50 years before Keynes even first proposed the idea. Bastiat argued that if you are to increase the growth of one sector of the economy, that necessarily comes at the cost of taking resources away from another section of the economy. This means that if you want to learn about Bastiat's theory, you cannot also listen to piano. Consider the typical example of a boy who breaks a glass window. The Keynesian argues that since the boy has created business for the glazier in town, this is a good thing because it stimulates the economy. In contrast, somebody who follows Bastiat's theory argues that since the owner of the window now has less money to spend on other items, the economy overall is the same. Overall, this refutes the idea of the Keynesian multiplier. In the industry, this means that the government cannot create growth. Growth is completely up to the private sector. Instead, all the government can do is shift resources from one sector to the other, which only creates frictional unemployment.
We've seen how, under the principles of Keynesianism, fiscal policy in both of its forms is capable of creating change that stimulates the entire economy. Bastiat offers an alternative to this. But in any case, it is important that the government acts methodically when intervening with the complex workings of the economy. For example, Obama predicted a multiplier effect that was far too high, and Bush implemented his tax cuts incorrectly. This goes to show that although governments are capable of creating good change in the economy, they must act carefully when doing so. For this 21st century edition of Economics USA, I'm Adarsh Iyer.
Funding for this program is provided by the Powate Foundation,
with support from the Bell Association.
Supply and demand in economics tell us that when prices increase, supply increases, but demand decreases. Conversely, when prices decrease, supply also decreases, but demand increases. Together, supply and demand establish equilibrium prices, and since market conditions continually change over time, these equilibrium prices do as well. Yet, in the real world, firms tend to keep prices and wages relatively stagnant over long periods of time. These are referred to as sticky prices and sticky wages. Why do firms do this, and how might this affect our economy? We ask these questions and more to our economic analyst, Patrick Huang, on this 21st century edition of Economics USA. I'm Adarsh Iyer. One reason for sticky prices is the menu cost. Consider a restaurant. It cannot continually change its prices because every time it does, it has to reprint its menus, which is a fixed cost that it accumulates over time. One example of a menu cost was with Coca-Cola, whose advertising campaign established a great momentum behind the idea of 5 cents per can. For this reason, that price stayed fixed for over 70 years. To explore further how the menu cost works, we turn to our economic analyst, Patrick Huang.
Menu costs are a fixed cost that the firm must pay for every single.
We regret to inform you that our esteemed economic analyst, Patrick Huang, has passed away. But we still require answers to our economic questions. So we turn to our new economic analyst, Hatrick Puang.
So, you want to learn about economics. Well, lucky for you, menu costs are very simple. Every time the restaurant changes its price, it incurs a fixed cost. For example, it must reprint its menus. Therefore, each firm must consider whether it is better to leave the costs as they are or to change the prices and hopefully make a profit. Obviously, constantly changing the price will accumulate a huge fixed cost, which is why sticky prices exist. In the case of Coca-Cola, they built up a huge advertising campaign of 5 cents a can. Changing all of those ads would require a huge amount of money, therefore making it unwise. Additionally, changing the price would change consumer expectations. Consumers were used to the idea that each can costs 5 cents. Consumers would not like if that changed.
Another reason for sticky prices is when a firm seeks to create a loss leader, a product that is priced very low but helps to create a symbol for the brand and draw in customers who will eventually purchase complementary products. For example, consider Costco's $1.50 hot dog. While Costco makes a loss on this very cheap product, it also draws in customers to the food court, and it creates a symbol for itself. Hatrick Puang explains in more detail.
Oh, you're back again. Well, several factors make the price of Costco's hot dog stick. First, Costco's main source of revenue is through memberships. This makes the loss from the hot dog very insignificant. Second, as Adarsh said, the hot dog is a symbol and attraction for customers, creating much more profit down the line. Therefore, it is unwise to remove the $1.50 hot dog, thus removing all of that customer loyalty. Several actions from Costco show how important this price is. When the price of meat in the market became unacceptably high, Kirkland Signature, Costco's main provider, created its own meat processing plants to reduce costs. Additionally, Costco switched from expensive 12-ounce aluminum cans to 20-ounce containers for soda, also to reduce costs. Much like with Coca-Cola, while the company's actions are not economically efficient, they are the best course of action for the firm.
In conclusion, firms keep sticky prices for 3 main reasons. The first is the menu cost. The second is to reduce confusion or dislike from changes to their advertising. And the third is to create a loss leader that becomes a symbol for the brand and draws in additional profits. The same reasons hold for why companies maintain sticky wages. Although this is not efficient in terms of the economy, it is the best course of action for companies. For this 21st century edition of Economics USA, I'm Adarsh Iyer.